All right, hello everybody, and welcome to Geopolitical Trends, where truth matters. Excited to be with you as always, but I am very excited to have Larry. He's right here. So Larry came in earlier here a little bit. We chatted, he and I. So once again, thank you very much, Larry, for coming on. Very,
Oh,
very
David,
excited.
always happy to sit down and chat with you. I think it's our first time in the new year, isn't it?
Indeed, indeed.
Okay.
And I couldn't think of a better time than to address some light topics, and
Yeah,
sort of
yeah. No,
just what's
nothing
going
going
on.
on. Nothing going on.
So this is what, I'd like to get your intel. We're gonna get into it right away. By the way, guys, I'm gonna put there is the full bio for Larry in the description, alongside with the links to all his Substack and other social media platforms. So I have them already in the description, so you'll find that in. So let's get into our conversation here, Larry. First of all, I would like to get your take into what some circles are saying, or let me just rephrase it this way: is Ukraine finished?
Yes, dead man walking. Just doesn't, like a chicken with its head cut off, running around still, bleeding, but it's bleeding out.
Yeah.
Um, Unfortunately, the United States is in a position we could put a stop to this tomorrow. We just tell Zelensky, hey, we're done. There's no more aid whatsoever. This comes to an end. But we're not going to do that, and so I anticipate
Mm-hmm.
at least another 100,000 or more Ukrainians will be killed and wounded in the
Wow.
next 2 months before the stop is put to all this. It's just like once Operation Bagration had been launched by the Soviets at the end of World War II, the war was over. Germany was defeated, but it's just the army hadn't put down its weapons, and the people were still willing to try to put their lives at risk. Same thing's happening in Ukraine. There's no way to turn this around.
Mm.
But many in the West continue to delude themselves that the Ukraine still has a chance. They don't. They're done.
So it seems like history is repeating itself. Now, with what you just stated, Larry, and given that now President Trump is sort of, we all know how Trump is. The
Yeah.
guy thinks outside the, for him to state, once I am elected, I'm going to end the war in one day. That's delusional to begin with.
Yeah, and
But
he to be fair,
yeah,
he backed off of that about 2 weeks, 3 weeks before, uh, or I guess right after the election. So he came to realize,
I
he
realize.
acknowledges it can take a while.
Yeah, yeah. But just to follow up on that, Larry, would it be fair to say who will end the war? Is it Trump or is it Putin?
Trump has no. The only way Trump can end the war is simply by cutting off all aid to Ukraine, and Ukraine would then be compelled to surrender. Barring that, Russia is going to end this war on Russia's terms.
Okay.
That is, the Kellogg saying, "Oh well, each side has to give." Wrong. Russia doesn't have to give a damn thing. They're under no pressure. They're not suffering massive casualties. They're not suffering economic harm to their economy.
Mm-hmm.
But what they do know is if they don't kill this threat, and it's not just Ukraine, it's NATO. If they don't kill it, then it's going to continue to come back and try to destroy Russia. That the West, the Europeans, the United States are obsessed with destroying Russia.
Hmm. Oh. Now, I'm reading. I had a chance to read the press release from the recent NATO Secretary General interview with the newspaper in Germany. It's called the Bild am Sonntag.
Uh-huh.
He stated, and I quote: "More money and more industrial production are needed to deter Russian President Vladimir Putin from attacking NATO territory." Now, how delusional is this guy?
Well, again, it's not Russia's not building bases in Ukraine on the border of Poland and Romania.
Mm-hmm.
It is NATO that's building bases in Poland and Romania, directed at Russia. Russia has not been conducting annual military exercises designed to attack Europe.
Yeah.
While the Europeans, through NATO and through the United States European Command for more than 20 years, have been carrying out annual military exercises, sometimes multiple exercises in 1 year, where Russia is the enemy and the West is attacking. It's always described as defensive operations, but when you look at when you got Marines, United States Marines in landing craft landing on beaches in the Black Sea in Ukraine, that was anything but defensive. So Russia recognized it has to eliminate not just Ukraine militarily, but NATO as a threat on its borders. But that'll be negotiated. They're not going to attack Europe. That's just it's a Western fantasy designed to justify $1 trillion budgets.
Yeah, I don't see that either. There isn't a way. Russia is not interested in such things. So, but this it comes on the heels of the upcoming summit between President Putin and President Trump. Nothing is definitive yet. There is conversation right now going on, discussions per se. And the two locations where the possible meeting or summit could take place is either Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. So now, if I am to ask you, Larry, can we expect where the Russians and the Americans come to some sort of an agreement regarding strategic interests? In other words, you give me some, I'll give you some.
The United States has no leverage in this. That's what Trump has to understand. Despite Trump saying, "Oh yeah, we're in contact with the Russians," Peskov, the press spokesman for the Kremlin, saying, "No, not true." Lavrov, not true. Rybakov, the deputy foreign minister, not true. So I don't know which Russians they're talking to, but they haven't talked to anybody that's in a decision-making position yet.
Yeah.
So there is no firm date set. Russia is continuing to press on with its offensive military operations and is just taking Ukraine apart piece by piece, dismantling their war machine. That's what it means to demilitarize. This meeting, when it happens, it's it's going to happen on Russia's terms. They're going to dictate the time, the place, the setting. Yeah. Because they're not in a defeated position. They're not in a position where they have to come to the United States and say, "Oh, help me." Trump's approaching this like he did one of his real estate negotiations. So back in the day, when he was trying to get a particular property, he'd find out, oh gosh, the guy that owns that property right now, boy, he is upside down. He owes more money than he can bring in. And he's being threatened with default. He's in a real economic dilemma. Therefore, I'll give him an offer he's going to have to accept just to get out from under, minimize the pain. It'd be like if somebody owed me, let's say $200,000, but I was short of cash and I needed $125,000 right now. If Donald Trump came and said, "Okay, I'll give you $125 if you forgive the rest of the $75,000 debt," I'd say, "Okay, I'll take that deal." That's the kind of negotiating process that Trump was used to. Russia's not in that position. Russia is not bankrupt. Russia doesn't need a damn thing the United States has to offer.
Yeah.
Now, if the United States makes some gestures like, "Hey, we're lifting the economic sanctions. We're restoring full diplomatic relations. We want your ambassador back here in Washington, D.C." And, if he was being smart about this, he'd then immediately offer, and then we're going to send a U.S. military unit, maybe the 101st Airborne, they were probably one of the most iconic military units from World War II. We're going to send them to Moscow for the May 8th parade, the military parade through Red Square, as a sign that we remember our partnership in defeating the Nazis. If Trump did something like that, then all of a sudden, I think you'd find open doors at the Kremlin and something to really talk about. But Russia's not just interested in ending the war in Ukraine. Putin and Lavrov and the rest of the Security Council in Russia recognize this is much broader. It's not Russia that walked away from the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty or the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty. Well, the first was George W. Bush, and the latter was done by Donald Trump. So, yet in the course of doing that, here's the irony: the U.S. walked away from those treaties, but Russia said, okay, they have built up their capability in both areas, in air defense and in intermediate range nuclear missiles. And, so now you've got on the air defense side, the anti-ballistic missile defense is S-500, S-550. No country in the world has anything to match what Russia does on that front. And on the intermediate nuclear range missile front, the Oreshnik, the hazelnut, the hypersonic missile that can't be stopped. So, again, Russia's, if Trump comes out, okay, let's negotiate. You need to give up these things. And Russia's going to say, you're crazy. We've got decided that this would be like at the end of World War II when the United States thought it was the only one with the atomic bomb. And it thought it could negotiate and force the Russians. Hey, we got the bomb, you don't. Well, it turned out Russia was working on it too. Its espionage network had helped it progress. But what this really means is that Washington can't offer to not build a robust weapon, and Washington can't promise that we're not going to activate a new air defense system. I mean, Trump's talking about, hey, yeah, we need to build one now, Star Wars, Star Shield. But that's going to take years. United States is well behind Russia when it comes to air defense and intermediate range ballistic missiles.
Interesting. And where will hypothetically we go with this scenario that there is a deal and the President Trump will send the unit to participate in the parade on May 8th and so forth? Where will Europe fit into this, given that it's be wagging its tail, either out of concern or out of sort of confusion?
Europe's irrelevant.
Wow.
They're not part of the deal. They are like an angry little dog that is just a nasty, foul-tempered beast, but with no bite, no ferocity. They think they're ferocious, and they make the noise. But Europe is a mess. Is the best way to describe it. In Germany, you have the Alternative for Deutschland, AfD, taking the lead, but again, it's got like 29% popular support. Well, that's well shy of a majority.
Yeah.
There's not a majority party in Germany. Same in England. Farage's party has apparently now surpassed both Labour and Conservatives, and yet again they're hovering around a number about 30%. Same with Macron in France. So when you look across Europe, except with exceptions in countries like Slovakia and Hungary, most of the other countries are these very fragmented domestic political populations that are they're split. Just like we were split here in the United States, except, again, Trump won a majority. He won a clear majority. You can't point to a single, at least if you point to Germany, France, England, the big three, and let's toss Spain in there for kicks. Maloney's already been elected. She was the only one I think that got a clear majority. All the rest will not have majorities. They'll have plurality, but then they'll have to cobble together some sort of fragmented government. So Europe, the point of all this is that there is not the political unity and vision about, oh my God, we got to rise up to protect ourselves against Russia. That's the view of a small moneyed class, basically.
So is this why now Europe is very concerned about even what Trump's going to be doing to them regarding the tariffs? I just read this morning that the parliament in Europe now discussing whether to approach the U.S. as an enemy or they don't know. They don't know what to do. So that would be very interesting to see.
Well, yeah, and the whole tariff business, Trump is potentially acting outside the law and trying to unilaterally impose tariffs because my understanding is the tariffs have to be approved by Congress. They have to be put in place by Congress, not by presidential decree and executive order. Yeah. So, these could actually be challenged in court, never go into effect. The concept of tariffs, it depends on actually which products are being sanctioned, and the term, is it short term, medium term, long term? Yeah. And short term benefit of tariffs is, yes, it can be economically profitable for the United States. It can reduce its foreign debt. But it also then, at least over the middle term, can certainly behave as a tax. Yeah. And it depends on the goods that are, which goods are suffering from the increased tax. There are some goods that you absolutely have to buy, like gasoline. You can't say, oh, I'm going to cut back. Okay, and if the price of that goes up, yes, that's going to drive inflation. If the bottle, if you like Tres Amigos tequila, and with a 25% tariff on that out of Mexico, it's going to go from $40 to $50 a bottle. All right, yeah, maybe you buy less tequila. You don't need to drink as many margaritas a month. It's not going to kill you. It might make you actually healthier. So I mean, it's going to vary. It's a bullying tactic. Yeah, and it's also sort of predicated upon an economy that doesn't exist anymore. When the concept of tariffs came into being, we did not have these complicated, complex global supply chains. We do now. And it's no longer that just a vehicle is made strictly here in the United States or strictly in Mexico or strictly in Canada. Components of it there are things that are made here in the States that are sent to Mexico and Canada to finish off the production. Yeah. So, I said it's very, very, very messy, but it's just, I think for Trump, it's just a negotiating ploy. It's a club he can threaten to wave. Yeah. Without people really thinking through, is it even a legitimate club?
Yeah. Well, to my knowledge, I read that one particular clause regarding the World Trade Organization, and that the Chinese are intending to file a lawsuit because of the violation of that. What you exactly said. Mm-hmm. So that's a good point. So let's go back to our key point about the upcoming summit between Trump and Putin. Why do you think, in your opinion, Larry, the location has been pinpointed to two? One is Saudi Arabia. The other one is the United Arab Emirates.
Well, again, those are based on speculation, and people think, well, where could Putin go that he's not going to be in fear of being arrested for that bogus International Criminal Court warrant that's out for him? Yeah. Both the Saudis have good relations with both Russia and the United States, so it could be seen as an honest broker. Again, this is. Putin is holding the dominant cards. Yeah. Putin's got the leverage in this, not Trump. Putin's not the one saying, I get that war stopped in a heartbeat. Really? Okay. Do it. Well, I need Russia's cooperation. Exactly. You need Russia's cooperation. And Russia, you know, Russia's in the position of the spouse that's been cheated on, you know, and she, her husband is not cheated on her once, not twice, 3 times. You know, the last one was the Minsk agreements, which, you know, were well, actually, that was the next to last one, the Minsk agreement. And that turned out to have been a complete fraud. None of the agreements and promises and assurances that were made by particularly France and England ever came to pass. And then when Russia had negotiated the outlines for a peace settlement with Ukraine in April of 2022, it was the United States that intervened to kill it. So again, Russia's sitting there just sort of scratching its head. And, you know, Trump doesn't have a lot of credibility with the Russians. Let's be frank about that. He's the one that walked away from the INF treaty. He's the one, unlike Barack Obama, that sent more weapons to Ukraine. So Trump's record as a peacemaker with respect to Russia is non-existent.
I don't see him moving forward with that. So now the idea of these locations. What about if we think about another possible locations? Let's say, just this is a hypothetical thinking. What about, let's say, China? What about, let's say, Indonesia?
Yeah, those would be interesting venues. Now, I know people need to understand that Donald Trump harbors the vision of splitting Russia from China and seeing China as the main threat. One of the senior officials in the new Trump Department of Defense, Elbridge Colby. Elbridge is the grandson of William Colby, who was the head of the CIA. He's the one that came up to Seymour Hersh, the family jewels 50 years ago. And I'm sure Elbridge was alive or knew his grandfather, maybe just a little bit. But Elbridge believes that he can split Russia off because China is the main threat. And China, Trump's saying he's going to impose these 10% tariffs on China. Well, as you pointed out, China's already filed suit on the international front. But beyond that, it's put U.S. Executives on sanctions lists. It's basically done to the United States what the United States has done to China. And it has, prevented the export of key rare earths that the U.S. military industrial complex needs to manufacture key weapon systems. So we're already in a trade war with China. It remains to be seen how much further the United States wants to ramp up the pressure. And, it's going to try to punish China for accepting Iranian oil exports and Russian oil exports. But those are the two cheapest sources of energy for China. China's not going to submit to that kind of pressure. And so this is all it's going to do is, Trump's raising tensions, not easing them.
So would it be fair to say that China should have a seat at the table? Because here's the thing, Larry, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because I trust your judgments on this. You've been around long enough to know, and you are aware of how history has unfolded. Yeah. And I'm going to take you back to the 1970s. What would have happened? And please, this is just for my audience to understand how the trends in history moves forward. What would have happened back in the 70s if the United States, the Soviet Union, and China sat down together? What will be the geopolitical landscape?
Well, yeah, it would have been historical. However, that's why Richard Nixon went to China in 1972 to sign a new deal with the Chinese. This was all about keeping China and Russia apart. This was to build up China's economy, hopefully forge a relationship with China where we could push China against Russia.
Russia.
And that's what was so amazing to me about Joe Biden. You know, I've argued that he should get the Nobel Peace Prize. And people go, what? Yeah, I mean, he was a terrible president. We may have been a terrible president, but he brought about the unity of Russia and China, in a historic unity, that they are now partners, full partners,
Yeah.
on both military fronts. You know, they've been conducting for the last 5 years joint military exercises with Iran. I put a lot of stock in that. That's not just some spur of the moment activity. So it's not so much what China wants out of the United States. Trump is incapable of giving. They want to guarantee that the United States is going to stop meddling in Taiwan. The Chinese agreed, and the United States signed on to it back in 1972, or I guess it's finally signed in '78 with Gerald Ford. The one China policy, accepting the fact that Taiwan is part of China. It's not an independent sovereign nation.
Yeah.
We accepted that Chinese position, almost 50 years ago. And the Chinese now expect us to uphold that bargain. And when we walk away from that, again, it's just one more nail in the coffin of U.S. credibility.
Yeah.
That no matter what we say, you can't trust a damn word out of our mouth.
Yeah. And this is exactly what I was coming from, just to understand, because again, to me, I learned from history, could it be now history repeating itself if China will sit down in this, I won't call it a summit, I will call it trilateral summit, because China had to be recognized in that as a major power, could change the direction of the global geopolitical landscape.
Yeah, but I think there's going to have to be bilateral talks between Trump and Putin, and Trump and Xi Jinping, before such a thing would be pulled off. If for no other reason, Trump would be at such a disadvantage, because China. You remember 2 weeks ago, a little more than 2 weeks ago, Monday, on the night that. On the day that Trump was inaugurated on January 20th, that night around 8 p.m., he held an impromptu press conference in the Oval Office as he signed some new executive orders. Well, about 4 or 5 hours after that, so let's see if it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, Washington, D.C. time, that means it was 10 a.m. in Moscow, 10 p.m. In Beijing, and Putin and Xi talked, and then she told Putin everything that because he had a phone conversation with Trump, told him everything about that, and then also went over what statements were coming out now and how they should coordinate. So China and Russia are now joined in a very real, genuine, strong relationship that's not going to be broken by the United States.
Yeah. Could the same be said about Russia and Iran, given the recent deal they just signed?
Yeah, in fact, that's that throws another wrench into Trump's previous preconceived notions about what he was going to get done in office. So on January 17th, when Putin signed with Pezeshkian that security arrangement, it's pretty comprehensive. One of the things in it was, basically Russia is going to come to Iran's defense if Iran is attacked. But there's language that it wasn't a direct, if you get attacked, we'll send soldiers. But it was more indirect. But I think it was done in diplomatic language that where Russia would act in accordance with Article 51 of the United Nations. Well, if Iran is attacked under Article 51, it's a self-defense actions, and Russia can come support that. But one of the key areas was the nuclear side of the house. Russia made a point that it would now work closely with Iran in helping modernize its nuclear industry. Russia would not sign on to that if Iran was going to build a nuclear weapon. The Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is the spiritual head of the Islamic Republic, and as such has not lifted. He views and is on the record as stipulating that for Iran to build a nuclear weapon would be harmful to the cause of Islam. It would be not in accordance with the laws of Islam. So until he gives the green light, Iran's not going to build a nuclear weapon. And now, in light of this agreement with Russia, it's even more unlikely. However, what we're seeing now in the last 2 days is a massive propaganda campaign has been started by the CIA, insisting that Russia's on the verge. Oh, it's on the verge. It's going to have it in 2 days. Claiming that they're building a nuke, that they're right away going to get a nuke, but it's described as crude. It's not sophisticated. It's crude. But they got a nuke. That's the red line. And based upon Trump's comments last night, then the United States is going to be compelled to attack. Now, I believe that Trump, in bringing this out in public as he did, was not necessarily signaling he's going to attack Iran. Yeah. I think this was more to put Israel on notice that you don't attack Iran. If anything's going to be done, we'll deal with it. So I think there were some other political angles there, but still, there is this right now this public propaganda campaign, and it's on the media to agitate for attacking Iranian nuclear facilities now.
Well, Iran didn't wait. As a matter of fact, Iran went ahead and it went ahead and confirmed that it shows off enough the defensive capabilities it has.
Yeah.
And the reason why they're doing this, I think, Larry, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I think they are giving a second chance to Trump if he wants to talk on it, sort of sit down and have a straightforward talk.
Yeah.
That's the only way I can see
it. I think, Trump, with all this public bombast, it could very well be that behind the scenes, they actually are approaching the Iranians to cut a deal. It wouldn't surprise me at all. But again, Trump's focus really needs to be on the domestic United States side. Yeah. Because making America great again is his slogan. That doesn't entail seeing how many more foreign entanglements we can come up with.
Yeah. Well, given his policies, the way he's thinking, because I just read this morning that there is now in State Department, which we will talk about regarding Marco Rubio's trip to Panama. I'm sure you're aware of it, Larry.
Yeah.
Just read something that now the U.S., what President Trump aims at, he wants to end the war. This is why I asked you that question earlier. Who will end the war? They're saying that Trump wants to end the war in Ukraine so he can divert the resources to the Pacific theater.
Right.
So
that's absolutely correct. The problem is the only way he can end the war is he stops all U.S. funding for Ukraine. That's the only way.
Can he?
Well, yeah, he can in a heartbeat. But will he? He's chosen not to so far.
Yeah.
So, he doesn't have any leverage to compel Russia to do what he wants. That's the point he needs to understand.
Yeah. Well, I'm having really doubt about him, given, like, for example, he just now requested from the Pentagon to authorize now the shipment of the bunker buster, I think, to Israel or something.
2,000-pound bombs.
Yeah. So, which was a free zone to this. What to me, it gives me an idea of how he thinks regarding this direction.
Well, right, but even if he sends it, where's Israel going to drop it?
Yeah.
They've already decimated. Gaza's already a pile of rubble.
Yeah.
So create more rubble? For what purpose? What the last 15 months have demonstrated, and This goes back to World War II and people like Hap Arnold and Curtis LeMay. At that time, the Army Air Corps insisted that by bombing from the air, they could win the ground war. Never happened. They bombed and killed about 800,000 German civilians through these aerial bombardments, both the Brits and Americans. That didn't end the war. And in Vietnam, didn't end the war. In Kosovo, didn't end the war. In Iraq, didn't end the war. In Israel and Gaza, did not end the war. Israel for 15 months. They could bomb at will, any place in Gaza they wanted. And of course, they killed as many civilians as they didn't care. And what did they accomplish?
Nothing.
Yeah, just created a bunch of rubble, killed at least 61,000 Palestinian men, women, and children, mostly women and children, and savaged, absolutely destroyed their reputation in the world, where they become a pariah, with the exception of just a few countries. And militarily, they exhausted their reserve soldiers and officers. So nothing to brag about. Not a great victory by any stretch.
Yeah. Let's turn our attention to Panama, and I'm sure if the community knows that Panama, Marco Rubio, that is Secretary of State, his first official trip was to Panama.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? I just came to my attention that the pressure. I had a chance to read yesterday, and also one of my avid supporter in the channel, Hanging G, sent me also a comment about it. That now Panama has caved in to the U.S. to push China out of managing the canal. Sort of, right? It's not complete.
We'll see. What's so curious about this is the Chinese have been there, to the two Hong Kong companies have been managing the container ports. So the Panama Canal runs north and south. It's not east and west. At the north end is Cologne. In Cologne, they've got at least 3 major container ports, like what you're showing now, all those big cranes. Well, those cranes, China owns those cranes. Panama doesn't. So you're going to kick out these Chinese companies? Okay. They're going to take the cranes with them. Okay. What's the United States got a ready supply of cranes it can put down there? No. And as well as having trained operators. If the United States goes through with this threat, it's going to potentially be economically catastrophic, because it's going to shut down a major flow of goods that are produced throughout Asia, not just China, throughout Asia, that transit the canal every day. What's so odd about this, though, is the Chinese have been there for 30 years. George W. Bush didn't make an issue of it. Obama didn't make an issue of it. Donald Trump didn't make an issue of it between 2017 and 2020 when he left office. So why now? Well, I guess now they see this as part of a broader, let's put pressure on China.
Yeah.
Except, I would argue that China was weaker 7 years ago. In 2018, that they were more susceptible to pressure from the United States, economic pressure in particular. Now that role has been reversed. One area is to note on the production automobile industry. So 10 years ago, my own company, my partner, we had a contract with one of the luxury automobile makers, a German, let's call him a German automobile manufacturer, because there was a scam going on in the United States where automobiles were being purchased from the dealers by, it looked like, an average college student, a retired lady, a school teacher. But those cars, once they were purchased, were turned over to these Chinese criminal organizations. Mm-hmm. And the way this deal would work, they would advertise on Craigslist for, hey, if you're a college student or a retiree or looking to make some extra money, call us. And you did, and if you'd go in and buy the car, mm-hmm. and you'd be given a cashier's check made out to Ford or Mercedes or BMW or Audi, whoever. And then when you came out with all the paperwork, you had the car, it wasn't financed, you turn it over to the Chinese contact, and they'd give you a check for $500 to $1,000. Those cars were then shipped to China and were sold on the black market. And this one car manufacturer, when we started, they were losing close to $1 billion a year. Wow. So, I mean, it was very expensive. It was really hurting them. Well, now in China, over the last 5 years, they're making their own luxury automobiles. So the demand for Mercedes, for BMW, has gone down. For Audi, much less. Number one. Number two, the U.S. automobile industry used to actually see China as an important market. Ford and Chevy were selling what were frankly pretty crappy cars that were not technologically sophisticated and were fairly expensive. Well, now China's just blowing them out of the water. China is producing magnificent cars that are technologically superior to anything in the United States, and cheaper, more inexpensive. Not cheap in the sense that they're shoddy materials and shoddy workmanship, but no, inexpensive, relatively inexpensive. Well, the Chinese market, automobile industry market, is supplanting and destroying the U.S. market. And Trump wants to put sanctions on the Chinese for that. The Chinese are not going to buy U.S. cars. Most U.S. cars that are made are crap. They're not. The United States got fat, old, and lazy. What the Chinese are building and selling, not just in China, but you saw it in Moscow. The Chinese luxury cars in particular, and Chinese SUVs, they're starting to take over the streets because the Russians prefer those to the Western products.
And I saw that when I was there, Larry. When I was in China, I saw I even went to the BYD and had a conversation with the manager, who was kind enough to let me, just to say, get in a car, check it out. He even allowed me to make a video from the dealership there. So, and the cars were so luxurious. And when I asked about the price and converted that to the US dollar, whatever, it turns out to be about $16,000 for a good quality car.
Yeah, that's
like very, very surprised.
Yeah, so we can't. The West can no longer compete with China.
It's a reality. So.
Well, and it's just and it's not just in that one area.
Yeah,
it's not in automobiles. It's now in artificial intelligence. We're seeing that. Wow. It's in ship production. It is. China has become an industrial behemoth, and the United States still is. We think we're the great athlete that we were 30 years ago, and we don't realize 30 years has passed. We've become overweight. Our muscles aren't as good, and we're not the player we thought we once were. So it's like. Mike Tyson, boy, he was a ferocious boxer in his prime. He got back in the ring with a younger guy who's no repute. I mean, he didn't have an established record, and Tyson got beat up. Yeah. He lost the fight. That's the United States. The United States is a little bit like an aging Mike Tyson.
Wow. And a great analogy, if I may say so. One last point on this before I move to my last question here regarding this Panama thing. Do you think this one has to do with also what Cuba just announced for joining BRICS? Is this because the U.S. is concerned now? Countries in the so-called Western Hemisphere are now considering moving alongside to BRICS.
Oh, well, that's, let's give Donald Trump some credit over Biden. During Biden's tenure, the United States didn't say one word about BRICS, didn't talk about it. I've said it was like BRICS was the economic word for Voldemort from, the Harry Potter series. You never say Lord Voldemort. Well, you can never say BRICS during the Biden time in office. However, Trump comes in and immediately identifies BRICS as a threat. Now, he misidentifies Spain as a member of BRICS, so okay, you got that wrong. It's South Africa. But he was acknowledging that, yeah, BRICS is an issue. You saw, I just saw a video reposted today from about a year or two ago with Marco Rubio when it's still in the Senate, complaining about China and Brazil signing a trade agreement where they're only going to trade in each other's currency, the real and the yuan. And Rubio's like, this is outrageous. Our sanctions won't work anymore. Now we're on to it. This is all about, we want you hooked on our dollars so that we can control you. And that's what this, what the war in Ukraine and the sanctions on Russia have exposed. That the United States is only interested in being able to use its economic clout to control and punish countries that don't do what it wants to do. Well, Russia, China, India, Brazil, South Africa, now Indonesia, Vietnam, they've all stood up and said, no, we're not going to take it anymore. We're not going to be treated like your prison bitch. You don't get to rape us economically.
Yeah.
You don't get to rob us economically. You're not going to destroy us this way. And that, the Biden administration didn't take that seriously. Trump is taking it seriously, but Trump's he's got not a lot of leverage. Again, he said, I'm going to impose 100% tariffs. Good. Because most of the BRICS countries don't trade with the United States at all. The bigger one is, yes, China.
Yeah.
China is the largest trading partner with the United States, along with Canada and Mexico. But unlike Canada and Mexico, where the deal with Mexico is done both from a trade standpoint to help their growth, the deal with China is China makes stuff that we need, that we can't produce ourselves. And if we get into that kind of trade war with China, the United States is in big trouble. So this is the world. The world has changed, and I don't think Donald Trump has yet caught up to the changes that have occurred.
Very interesting. So let me address the last question. Not a question, it's sort of, I just want to have your take into this. So I have I read an analysis, a white paper that is, and he stated, and I quote, Trump confirmed interest in Ukraine's rare earth minerals is being you know what I'm getting at, Larry, right? You know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, hey, Ukraine, you pay us with rare earth minerals for the military equipment we're sending you. Great idea.
Yeah.
Only one little problem. Those rare earth minerals are in Donetsk and Luhansk, which are controlled by Russia. So Ukraine has no access to those rare earth minerals anymore. And so, it could offer to pay, it could write IOUs to the U.S. government.
Yeah.
But it's Russia that's that controls that. So it's just, that was again, sort of a silly statement by Trump where he wasn't properly briefed, didn't know what the lay of the land was.
Yeah.
And it reinforces, though, this notion that the United States, it doesn't care two cents for the life of any Ukrainian. By God, this is all about stealing the wealth of Ukraine, the physical wealth, and using it for the United States.
Well, apparently his Secretary of State didn't get it either, because right after what Zelensky is saying, the victory plan by allowing country allies to extract critical mineral, this is where Rubio came in, and he warned about the strategic advantage that China derives from the control of air. So it tells me right there, right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. And whomever is advising Trump, it's not giving him the right information. So I'll give you the last word, Larry.
Well, I just noticed one of your commenters wrote a question. Jill Dog said, "Ask Larry what his opinion is on Andrew Bustamante." Do you know who Andrew Bustamante is?
Yeah, of course, the former CIA. Yeah, I know who he is.
I don't hold a high opinion of him.
No, the guy was a foot soldier, so I kind of.
Well, then he was, he's got a bit of the Kool-Aid. He loves some of the neocon Kool-Aid. I'll call it that way.
Yeah. So. No, I'm aware of him. I was aware of him even when I was in DC. So.
Yeah, anyway. we're gonna see this. I think the real big news this week. Is the exposure of USAID as a full-fledged operator of the CIA operation. CIA was heavily involved with it. It was played a critical role in launching color revolutions, or trying to launch color revolutions. Defanging USAID has been important. What nobody will answer, because Trump made a point of saying, we're going to take it apart. But when you look at the budget of AID, the budget was unchanged virtually from 1990 to 2000. It was about $7.7 billion. It grew about $5 billion more under George W. Bush. Then it grew another $5 billion, roughly up to $17 billion under Barack Obama. So it was $17 billion a year. Then in Donald Trump's third year in office in 2019, the budget for USAID went from $17 billion to $41.7 billion.
Wow.
What the hell? Now, was that done with Trump's knowledge? Was that done without Trump's knowledge? Was that something that some cabal of in Congress cobbled together? Because a lot of that money got steered to NGOs that were chaired by friends of people in Congress. And, some of it, in fact, today, I don't know if you saw the article, Politico, they were taking USAID money, like $8 million, and are having trouble paying their salaries this week. That just coincides with this cutoff in funding from USAID. So, a lot of corruption there. So Trump, what we've seen by Trump, unlike 2017, came into office in 2025 ready to attack the deep state, and is doing it, and doing it pretty effectively so far.
Well, yeah. I got a question here from one of my avid supporter, Larry, if you allow me here. Francis Tango. Thank you very much, Francis Tango. A question for you, Larry. How do you see the future, peace or war? Given the geopolitical shifts that's taking place around the world, how do you see it?
I think it's going to be let's call it a forced peace. There's going to be a lot of war talk, but the actual ability, to use a crude metaphor, but it's like a man with impotence with no access to Viagra. So you can talk about getting all the action you want, but when it comes time to perform, you're unable to perform. And that's what the West is. The West has built up this grossly overpriced piece of military junk. We got aircraft carriers that cost $14 billion, take 5 years to build, that can be taken out by $100,000 hypersonic missile. That the Houthis made, and we can't stop the Houthis. So if there is any effort to expand the war, here's Israel again talking tough, but let's look. They failed to defeat Hamas in 15 months when they had every military advantage at their disposal. What does that say about Israel's military? So we're in a new age where these conventional military capabilities don't always translate into victory on the ground like we used to think they did.
Indeed. Army with Harmony, I want to say thank you for gifting a membership to someone. So thank you so much for that. And Alamseen, I thank you again for your super sticker. Greatly appreciated. Well, Larry, I appreciate you for carving out time for us as always. Really, it's a treat for me when you're here. So
my pleasure, David. Thank you for entertaining me.
You are most welcome, and we look forward to seeing you again. So on behalf of the entire community, I say thank you, Larry.
Great.
You take care, brother.
Thanks so much, man. Bye, David.
My pleasure. Bye. Guys, I hope you enjoyed listening to Larry. He's a wealth of information, knowledge, and so forth. And I tip my hat to Larry for really, anytime I reach out, he'll respond within literally less than 48 hours. So, and I look forward to extending the conversation with him on other topics. So just a reminder quick, guys, remember to join me at 17:30 for my conversation with Jayant Bahandari regarding whether India needs to leave BRICS because it's just like a dead weight, according to some analysts. And I'm going to be addressing a host of issues regarding this with Jayant, who is has been around long enough to know how things are. So on the other hand, I will be working on some topics for you. As a matter of fact, I read something last night regarding this Panama, which, by the way, Hank, if you're still here, thank you very much for the comments because you brought that up. And I wanted to, so I read up on from other sources, and I'm going to do a live stream on that topic for you guys while I'm working on others. And if I end up having too many, we'll do a survey like always. So I greatly appreciate your support for that. This is the link for if you want to support my upcoming trip to Asia. As I mentioned, I will be disclosing the figure amount that I need to raise for this trip, because there are different locations that I have in mind. Nothing's been confirmed yet, but I will finalize everything by the end of the month. So once again, greatly appreciate you guys, and I look forward to seeing you again. As always, remember, geopolitics impact your daily life in more ways than one. Till next time, guys. Bye-bye.